Julitus 18th, 4:36. We received another letter from Gwenda, and like the previous one, it was carried by an unconventional courier. An older man named Daxel had knocked on our front door with a letter in hand. Like the last courier, my family fed the man, paid him well for bringing us news, and lent him a bed to sleep in. Gwenda and her division had garrisoned the city of Darvaux, which was perhaps about 35 miles or so to the northeast of Lafer. They must have taken the northern bridge, because there are only 3 bridges across the wide Shrivoli River. My sister explained that about 60% of Remay's entire army was stationed along the Skenderite borders, or in close proximity to them. As far as she has heard, there will be 2 fronts to worry about. Both the southern border south of the Remayan city of Matin, and the vast eastern border. She told us that she would fight as hard as she could to keep our precious land safe, but the Skenderite army was far larger and perhaps stronger than that of Remay's. She speculated whether or not having to defend our homeland would have any effect on our countrymen and countrywomen, but then dismissed the whole notion, as the Zortichans were beaten back halfway across their country. Gwenda begged us that if the Skenderites pushed into Remay, that we would promise to flee to Starlo. Upon hearing my father read those words, a great quaking awoke in me. As I mentioned, my sister Gwenda is my favorite person, and for her to suggest that we prepare to run, well, things were bad. Based on her limited information, the Skenderites had occupied several of the Sortijan cities located in the eastern half of Sortig. We as Remayans are a proud people, and the mere thought of being occupied by an outside force, well, it was sickening. I pray that the goddess help us. Zemez. Julitus 30th, 4:36. So far, the Skenderites haven't entered our lands yet. Each morning I wake up in a dread-soaked sweat, wondering if today would be the day that Remay is forced to fight. The weight of the world's anticipation smothers me every day I step outside to deliver bread. I wonder what the world would have been like had we joined one side or the other. If we would have fought with Baton and Sortig, then the war would have been born on the threshold between our homeland and Skendar. On the other hand, had we sided with Skendar, we would have had opposition on 2 massive fronts. Remay had no quarrel with anyone, and we maintained our neutrality. And yet, now we are forced to bolster ourselves against a fearsome nation. Another puzzling question keeps prodding at me. Should I have volunteered to be a soldier too? I'm not a fighter or a warrior, but just a simple average man. Every moment awake seems like a noxious and dreary exercise, and yet there is one thing that is comforting. My family makes bread for people, and our bread makes people happy. That alone consoles me during this stormy time. There are so many things in this world I can't handle, but at least I could make some damn good bread. Zemez. Augustine 5th, 4:36. It finally happened. According to eyewitness accounts from fellow Remayans fleeing north, at least 10 Skenderite battalions have marched into Remay, and they're currently fighting in Matin. I'm not certain about elsewhere, or for that matter where Gwenda is, but it seems that the peaceful Remay that we've come to know is gone, shattered under the cold hammer of war. Zemez. Augustine 8th, 4:36. Today we received reports from the mayor at another town hall meeting. As my family and I walked toward the meeting, an overwhelming sense of frantic dread dominated us. And no one, not even Peter, said anything. This is a scary time. And prior to the meeting, I kept wondering whether or not my beloved sister Gwenda was all right. It would have been unrealistic to hope that she was safe. I was fine with hoping that she would still be alive. When my family settled among the rest of the town in attendance, I noticed that we weren't the only group to be stricken mute. There had been 2,000 volunteers who left Le Fair several months earlier. Odds are, some of them were sent to the south. Mayor DeFranco had a withered facial expression as she took the podium, as if the weight of the grim news she held already started to consume her. She began the meeting with a statement, "We are at war." A heavy silence trailed the wake of her words, and we all inched forward in our seats, waiting for more. The mayor confirmed what we already knew, that the Remayan city of Maten was in dire conflict. Our nation's armies were trying to take Maten back, but the Skenderites were dug in pretty well. Nearby villages were also being taken over by roving bands of Skenderites. And then the mayor revealed information I knew was coming, but begged the universe a reprieve from. However, I was not prepared for what she had to say exactly. Mayor DeFranco indicated from reports received from the capital that the city of Darvo was completely surrounded by Skenderite forces. 9 battalions attacked from the east, while another 20 battalions had marched up through the southeastern border. The mayor told us frankly the Remayan military forces gathered there were trapped, and were currently fighting against insurmountable odds. My father stood up, and his words were filled with the fright only a parent could muster. He asked when the Remayan military would send reinforcements to aid the garrisoned forces at Darvo. He was answered with only silence. Even before the mayor could make an attempt to answer, after the unspoken reply, my father sat back in his chair and started sobbing loudly. Other people in the room began to cry as well. Even I let my tears fly freely. The mayor finished off the meeting by saying that they would be hunkering down and preparing to have to defend Le Fair as well. The walk home from the town hall meeting was just as quiet as the walk there. My heart hurts so much right now. And this is all I could write tonight. Zemez. August 12th, 4:36. Darvo has been sacked, and every Remayan soldier has been presumed killed in action. August 15th, 4:36. It has been 3 days since we found out about the news, and I still can't believe you're gone, Gwenda. I started keeping this journal to honor you, and to share my thoughts, perspectives, and whatever else with you. And now you'll never get to read them, or hear me speak them to you. Mother and Peta stopped crying yesterday, but Father is still very much a broken man. You were his shining star, his most favored child. And now, you are a specter in our memory. I suppose I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel. Although I'm sure it's safe to say I am a broken man too. I'm sorry that you aren't here with us anymore. And I wish so many things didn't happen. In addition to the constant sadness left by your absence, I have this ever-building rage inside me. Damn the leaders of Skendar, Baton, and Sortig. It's all their fault that you were ripped from us. It's all their fault that their aggression exploded across our landscape and spilled into Ramay. I will never forgive them for robbing us of you. There's talk that Matin will fall to the Skenderites in the next day or so. It's obvious that Lafer will be next. As I deliver our bread, I hear other Remains talk. More than a few of the families on my route have expressed they will be fleeing to Starlo. But there are other Remains who cannot run. They plan to stay. From what I gather, though, anyone with children has strongly been advised to leave Lafer. Our family is planning on leaving, but for some reason, thinking about running makes me sick. I keep wondering, what would Gwenda do? I know you as well as I know myself, and thus I know what you would do. I also know what you'd say to me. Keep writing. Record your perspective. Record your thoughts. Record history. I haven't told the family what I plan to do yet. But also, if there are people that are going to stay, then they're going to need fresh-baked bread. I'm scared, Gwenda. But then I remembered how you volunteered to fight for our people and our land. Please, instill with me a fraction of your unshakable courage. I'll let the family know tomorrow morning. I'll see you sooner or later. Zemez. Augustine 16th, 4:36. I told my family that I'm not going with them. At first, my father was adamant about not losing another child, and yet I couldn't be dissuaded. I explained my points as such. Firstly, there are plenty of our neighbors and patrons in our communities who aren't leaving, which means they're going to need the services of an experienced baker. Secondly, Starlo would be very overcrowded with people from other parts of the country, trying to get away from the Skenderites. Lastly, and this seemed to make my father the most upset, I pointed out Gwenda would have stayed, if at the very least to have great stories to tell. My father yelled, he waved his hands, but his demeanor changed when my mother gave me her blessing. Of the two, she had always been the level-headed one. My father hugged me tightly and told me that he was very proud of the man I had become. My father wanted to leave in the morning, but I recommended that they leave at lunch today. With how fast the Skenderite military had been advancing, tomorrow morning might be too late. The parting with my family was difficult to be sure, but a small measure of ease and satisfaction danced in me. For them, getting into Starlo, with as crowded as it was going to be a lot easier for 3 people rather than 4. And for me, it was easier for me to avoid danger alone. If they would have stayed here, there was no telling what would have happened to them. I'm sitting here in my home, all alone. It's eerily quiet even outside among the other neighbors. I've never really been drenched in so much noiselessness, and so I found myself tapping on the table or coughing just to have something to break the silence. The beguiling calm is maddening because I know something is rolling ever closer beyond the horizon. What dark days will the future bring me? What dark days are ahead of Reme? Zemez.